I can tell you that we are going to ask you to fill out a city application, and that's going to list dates of employment, reason for leaving. Tell me that, because that is not your fault. That is something that happened to you, and that tells me you were a good employee, but something happened that caused you to have to leave that position. Make sure I have a contact name. And if you get to the point where you have an interview, I'm going to ask you, can I contact your references? And then I can talk to someone there.
Great answer. You're at some point you have to fill out an application form, and they always ask you, where you worked and when you started and when you ended and the reason that you left. So it's really important, to be honest about that but to be professional about that, because sometimes you can say too much that's unfavorable, even if it might be justified on the other end. So I think just try to be as professional as you can about it, and positive is the best policy.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. For our librarian positions, you don't actually have to fill out an application. We just are looking at your resume. So as Jason was talking about, if it's obvious that you're not working, we may try not to make the worst assumption, but we often do. And I've definitely seen people on a search committee say, oh, they're not working. Why is that? Were they fired? What happened? What happened? And so better to just put in the cover letter and say, what I like to see is a little bit of context along with that. I mean, the library world is small. We know which places are laying off tons and tons of people. And so if you can tell me a little bit about that, I was laid off from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg library system where, they had to lay off half their staff. That tells me a lot. If it's somewhere that's not downsizing and you were laid off, that tells me something else. So think about how you put the context of that.
Yeah, and that explanation doesn't have to take up a whole page. And no, we don't
Right.
want that whole long history of that. But to echo, we do look at gaps in employment. If you've got a gap that's not explained, I mean, that little red flag goes up. Not a major, a medium red flag goes up. It's like, was this person in jail? I mean, so you always, try not to assume the worst. But so kind of that narrative of in the cover letter of explaining what's going on. A few sentences, that takes care of it. So.
And be positive.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very much so. Do not. I've heard horror stories of people not even making it back to their full-time job from another job story, where the person with whom they interviewed has already called their person supervisor and said, "I cannot believe this person works for you. All that she did was blast your organization for an hour that she was here." Be positive, no matter how bad the situation is. So, because the supervisor's trying not to let in a bad apple, because you don't want them bouncing back and forth, and once one gets in, it's hard to get rid of them.